There's a type of person who's honestly kind of strange. They walk into a room and within seconds, they already know something's off. Nobody raised their voice, there was no scene, but their brain finished the full scan before you even sat down. They catch a gaze that drifts away, a smile that doesn't reach the eyes, a sentence that sounds normal but carries a strange energy underneath. A lot of people think that's a gift, almost a superpower. The truth is the opposite. That constant reading of the room is actually a trap. The problem is they don't have an off switch. They can't just be in the moment and leave it there. They take it all home, take it apart piece by piece, replay it on a loop. They can turn 3 seconds of silence into a full thesis. And if you know someone like this, or if you are that person, you already know it's not comfortable at all. Because this hyper-awareness has nothing to do with intelligence. It has to do with seeing layers of meaning that everyone else walks right past without a second glance. It can feel like a gift. It can also drain you completely, little by little, without you even noticing. Today we're going to break down the psychology behind people who are permanently on alert and look at what they can actually do so that mind doesn't end up swallowing them whole. First, we need to understand where this comes from. Why do some people end up living in permanent scanner mode? Psychology usually explains it through 2 different paths. In the first group, the sensitivity comes built in. Science calls them highly sensitive people, and they carry a trait known as sensory processing sensitivity. From birth, their nervous system works like an ultra-high-definition filter. Everything comes in more intensely than usual. For them, the world never runs in standard resolution. The second group is different. There, the over-awareness wasn't something they were born with. They earned it the hard way. Neuroscience has a name for this: hypervigilance. And it almost always takes root in an unstable environment during childhood. Picture a kid growing up in a house where the adults' moods shift like weather, with no warning. That kid doesn't get the luxury of living without thinking. They have to become a full-time radar antenna. Maybe they were the kid who memorized the exact sound of tires pulling into the garage, just to know, before the door even opened, whether their dad was coming home calm or coming home wrong. The one who learned to measure exactly how angry mom was just from the slam of a kitchen cabinet. They knew precisely when to walk into the living room with a smile ready, and when it was better to quietly disappear into their room. Biologically speaking, the amygdala, the brain's danger alarm, stays switched on all the time. And it records a simple message: this place isn't safe. Keep scanning. Nobody taught them this. Their own nervous system built, on its own, an entire network dedicated to predicting emotional disaster before it arrives. Over the years, that survival vigilance turns into identity. It becomes part of who they are. And once they reach adulthood, they often judge themselves without mercy. They ask themselves why they overthink everything so much. What's wrong with them? Nothing is wrong with them. What they have is a type of intelligence forged by survival. The shield that protected them as kids stayed fused to their skin. So when that shield carries into adult life, how does it actually show up? Let's get into sign number 1. Sign 1. Living in a permanent state of analysis. It's the most visible sign and also the one that drains the most energy. For most people, a conversation is just that, a conversation. For them, there's always a second equation running underneath. Here's a real example. Your boss messages you at 4 in the afternoon. Come see me when you get a chance. For most people, that's just a meeting. For them, it's a silent alarm. They pick up on something off in how it's worded, a coldness nobody else would notice. And automatically, they start wondering if the boss is upset, if they messed something up without realizing it. They don't just listen to the words. They register the 3-second pause before someone compliments their shirt. They notice the faintest shift in how the other person is breathing. Part of this connects to the default mode network, the brain circuit responsible for reflection and self-referential thought. In most people, it activates when the mind is idle or resting. In them, that network stays switched on almost constantly, so the mind falls into non-stop analysis. They're right there, nodding, holding their coffee, taking part in the conversation, but the other half of their head is taking notes, comparing details, drawing conclusions. The result is that their mind almost never truly rests. They can end up exhausted after a full day just sitting in an office because internally they just finished running a marathon nobody else saw. That analysis doesn't just look outward, it also turns inward, and that's where sign 2 shows up: hyper-self-awareness. In psychology, metacognition is thinking about your own thinking. It lives in the prefrontal cortex, and everyone has it. The difference is that in them, that switch never turns off. They don't just feel an emotion and move on. They monitor it. It shows up, they analyze it, they judge it. They're walking down the street and suddenly feel sad. Instead of letting it pass, they mentally cross their arms and start the interrogation. Why am I sad? Does this even make sense? I have a good job, I should be grateful. So why do I feel this way? Something must be wrong with me. Even joy runs through the same filter. They're at dinner, they laugh at a joke, and a second later part of them is already floating near the ceiling, evaluating whether they laughed too hard, whether it sounded fake. It's like dancing while constantly checking your reflection in a mirror to correct your posture. They might not miss a single step, but they lose all sense of flow. Their awareness sharpens. Their natural presence, meanwhile, quietly fades. When that internal camera runs too long, we get to sign 3: losing innocence in relationships. This finely tuned awareness makes them start seeing the behind the scenes of human behavior. Psychology calls this strong inference about other people's intentions theory of mind. They realize, maybe before anyone else, that people don't always say exactly what they mean. A coworker brings them coffee and compliments the project they just finished. Instead of simply enjoying the compliment, their brain immediately scans for the real motive. What does this person want from me? Are they expecting me to share client data with them? They realize kindness sometimes comes with conditions, that affection can, deep down, be a calculated investment, and that someone's confidence on a first date might just be a curtain hiding their fear of rejection. This creates a quiet kind of loss. Not the loss of childhood innocence, but the loss of relational innocence. The ability to fully trust the surface of words. No digging for a hidden layer, just isn't there anymore. A compliment always seems to carry extra layers. An apology never feels complete because they suspect the other person is apologizing just to smooth things over, not because they actually accept the blame. A promise sounds fragile the moment they hear it. They don't become bitter or resentful toward the world, they just become extremely cautious. And yes, sometimes they feel lonely even in a crowded room, because nobody else seems to see the layer of truth they're seeing. That layer of truth doesn't just stay in logic, it sinks into their emotional body, which brings us to sign 4, empathy that's always switched on. For them, empathy isn't something they turn on when a friend is crying. It's a permanent state, running around the clock. They walk into a meeting room where nobody has said a word, and they can already feel the irritation between two coworkers. Their mind works like blotting paper, soaking up everything. Psychology calls this cognitive empathy. But for them, it doesn't stop at understanding with the mind. It crosses over into emotional empathy, where they genuinely absorb and live inside someone else's pain, as if it were their own, not just in theory. This ties into mirror neurons. When they see someone express an emotion, those neurons fire as if they themselves were feeling it. In an average person, that stays at the level of understanding. In them, it becomes total absorption. Someone next to them on the bus taps their foot with nervous energy, and suddenly their own heart starts racing for no clear reason. A friend talks about their divorce, and that pain settles into their chest for days afterward. The result is that they become the emotional regulator for everyone around them. They know how to soften their voice, pick their words carefully, and take the edge off any tension. People love being around them because they feel understood. The price is paid by only one person: exhaustion. They become a container for everyone else's emotional waste, and hardly anyone stops to notice that the person who always understands others also needs someone to understand them. All those bottled up emotions don't disappear. They move straight into the body. Sign 5. When awareness links up with anxiety. Awareness doesn't live only in the mind. Science has a term for this: interoception, the ability to sense the body's internal state, processed by the insular cortex. People who are overly aware often have an extremely sensitive interoception system. They drink a strong espresso and their heart beats a little faster from the caffeine. For most people, that just feels like being alert. But for their nervous system, it's different. The brain detects the faster heartbeat, checks its internal records, and sounds the alarm. Fast heartbeat equals danger. A panic attack is coming. A completely normal physical sensation turns into an exaggerated warning sign. This creates a brutal loop. A physical sensation appears, the brain misreads it as danger, the body triggers a stress response and releases hormones like cortisol, which leads to even stronger physical sensations. The result is that their body becomes a constant stream of emergency data. They feel restless and uncomfortable all the time, even when nothing is actually wrong. When the body and the emotions become too much, the mind starts looking for one final escape to restore order. That's when awareness quietly shifts from being a lens for observation into a strategy for control. This isn't about controlling other people directly, it's a subtler internal defense mechanism. They operate on an unspoken belief. If they can predict every possible variable, pain won't be able to catch them off guard. For them, understanding becomes a kind of armor. They believe that seeing heartbreak coming far enough in advance will keep them from falling apart when it finally arrives. Their mind starts running simulations nonstop, quietly, endlessly, in the background. What if that person suddenly walks away? What if everything I've worked so hard to build disappears tomorrow? If the worst really happens, how should I react so I don't fall apart? This leads to a state called analysis paralysis. They get trapped inside a maze of what-ifs, living out 10 different versions of the future while dissecting every possible risk, even though the present moment hasn't fully happened yet. This constant vigilance is exactly what keeps them from fully belonging to the present. And the cruelest part of this protective strategy is the trade it forces. By trying to get ahead of pain, they slowly drift away from their own life. Instead of taking part in the flow of life with all its uncertainty and beauty, they start managing life like a high-stakes project. Protection replaces presence, leaving them exhausted from constantly watching for ghosts of a future that hasn't even arrived. So, what can people who are overly aware actually do? They can't just switch off their awareness. It's like asking someone with perfect vision to suddenly see everything blurry because you politely asked them to. The solution isn't to be less aware, it's to stop carrying all of it. In therapy, this usually means setting emotional boundaries and adjusting certain thought patterns. Learning to notice things without absorbing them. People who manage to lift this weight tend to anchor themselves in 3 freeing principles. First, not every silence is a hidden message. If someone replies to a text slowly, sometimes they're just tired. If a coworker walks past without smiling, maybe they just have a headache. They learn to stop taking everything personally. Second, not every emotion that shows up needs to be resolved. Anxiety can appear, and instead of rushing to analyze why, they simply say, "Oh, my heart is racing. It's just a physical sensation." They observe it without judgment and let it pass. Third, not every idea or perception needs to be spoken or acted on. They can clearly see someone's insecurity without becoming that person's therapist. They can notice instability in a relationship, and sometimes the best response is simply to step back. They start to realize that clarity is only a gift when it comes with boundaries, knowing what's theirs to manage and what belongs to the world to leave alone. And when they start practicing this kind of letting go, something remarkable happens. Their awareness doesn't disappear, it softens and matures. They still see deeply into human nature, but they no longer cling to other people's flaws. They can still feel the energy of a room just as strongly as before. They just no longer get pulled into its current. The shift happens inside them. They move from using awareness to predict to using it to be present. They move from fear to curiosity. Instead of analyzing whether someone's smile is fake, they simply enjoy a sunny afternoon and a good cup of coffee. Their life finally becomes lighter, not because the outside world suddenly gets simpler or because people suddenly become less complicated. The world stays just as full of contradictions. Life gets lighter because they stop trying to carry every equation in the world on their shoulders at the same time. They can't turn off that light running in their head, but they can turn down its intensity. They can turn it from a sharp laser that exposes every flaw into a warm candle. A candle bright enough to understand human fragility, but soft enough to warm themselves too. A candle bright enough to understand human fragility, but soft enough to warm themselves too. These are people who think deeply and feel deeply. If you ever look at someone like this and notice their silence, understand that it isn't indifference. It's a beautiful form of wisdom, one that has learned to understand life instead of being imprisoned by it. If this felt familiar and you saw yourself in this world of overly aware people, leave a comment about which sign fits you the most. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. The depth you carry isn't a flaw. It's a gift that's waiting for your understanding and compassion. If this video helped you feel a little lighter and gave you a new way to see yourself, hit like and share it with a friend. Someone who might also be tired of the noise of a mind that never truly rests. Your understanding today could be exactly the comfort someone else needs. Thanks for watching all the way through. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next videos. See you next time.